The agenda for the second plenary session is mapping towards a certification program. The presiding chair for this plenary session is Professor Mary K. Kane, Chancellor and Dean Emeritus, UC Hastings College of the Law, United States, and IALS board member and chair of the Emeritus Council. The co-chairperson, who will provide a digital address, is Dr. Simon Chesterman, Dean, National University of Singapore, School of Law, Singapore. The panelists for this afternoon are Professor Penelope Andrews, Dean, University of Cape Town, Faculty of Law, South Africa, Professor Javier de Sendra de Laragon, Dean, IE University, Law School, Spain, Professor Joanne Howlett, Professor of Law and Associate Dean, University of Minnesota, United States, and Professor Eleanor Wong, Vice Dean, National University of Singapore, School of Law, Singapore.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to amend something, and that is, as you can see, there are four of us in front of you, and that is, Javier will not be with us this afternoon. He'll be joining the forum later because of the way his connection's made, and so he will not be speaking. But as you heard, fortunately, Simon is going to be with us via video at some point. And let me just say, in terms of the way we're going to kind of proceed on this panel, is that first we will hear from Simon about the program. Then I'm going to provide you an overview of how it's going to work, how we are hoping to roll it out, the ideas that we now have going forward, because this is something we're going to be doing over the next few years, and sort of where we're at now in that process. And then Dean Penelope Andrews is going to be looking at this whole process from a dean, give a dean's perspective, looking at it, ideas, how she thinks it could be useful or maybe thought through. And then Associate Dean Joan Howland is going to discuss what, going forward when we start doing this, what would a school visit look like? What would you expect? If you asked IALS to come to your school for a site visits, then what would be entailed in that? What would it look like? And then Vice Dean Eleanor Wong is going to sort of be our wrap-up specialist. She's going to give you some broad reflections about what we've been talking about up here, and maybe ask some questions. And so we're going to lead off with a welcome from my co-chair, Simon Chesterman. And so I will ask the powers that be that have control of the video if they would please put it up.
Hi, my name is Simon Chesterman. I'm Dean of the National University of Singapore Faculty of Law. And I wanted to send my apologies that I couldn't be there in person at Symbiosis Law School. So apologies in particular to Dean Shashikala Gupur, who's been such a wonderful participant in International Association of Law Schools events. I'm really sorry I couldn't take up your kind offer of hospitality. But I'm delighted that my colleague, Vice Dean Professor Eleanor Wong, is there to represent NUS. Apologies also to Frank Wong, who's really been the driving force behind the International Association of Law Schools. Everyone who attends an IALS event really knows how warm, energetic, and enthusiastic Frank is for this enterprise. And so even though I'm not there, I can just feel the energy, I can feel the enthusiasm that is coursing out of him as he works with you through this meeting. I didn't just want to send my apologies for not being there in person, I also wanted to send my own warm wishes and my own hopes for collaboration as we move forward with the evaluation, assessment and certification program. And I wanted to outline my commitment on behalf of NUS Law that we really want to be a part of this. And that's partly going back to how it started, where I see it now and where I see it in the future. In terms of where it started, really much of this goes back to the 2013 Global Law Deans meeting at NUS Law, where we were absolutely thrilled to bring together scores of deans from around the world to agree on the baselines of what a legal education is meant to achieve. And that was written up in the Singapore Declaration. Building on that, we had the Madrid Protocol, and now we're really heading towards having real meaningful standards for what we mean by legal education. And that's where we are today, trying to work out what exactly we mean by that and what the purpose of this is. And my understanding, and I think I'm on the same page with most of you, is that this isn't really about judging schools or assessing whether they pass as a law school or not. What we're really about is trying to raise the standards of legal education globally. But management speak often says that you can't improve what you can't measure. And so what we're really trying to do is provide some kind of metric that will give us a baseline of what we mean by legal education. Moving forward, what I see that meaning is really an opportunity for us all not only to raise the standards of legal education elsewhere, but to raise our own standards of legal education. We in US law continually learn new skills, new opportunities, and new challenges in how we approach legal pedagogy through our interaction with other law schools, in particular through the International Association of Law Schools. So I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I look forward to catching up with many of you in person on a later date, and really wish you well for the success of this event. Thank you all very much. Hi, my name's Simon.
Okay, now we see how technology can help and hinder as we go through. But as Simon just mentioned, and this is sort of my overview that I want to give you before we get into some of the nuts and bolts. The criteria on which this program is based are the standards that we adopted in the 2013 Singapore Declaration. And however, if you look at that declaration, it covers a lot of areas of the institution in terms of the aspirations of how a well-functioning law school should go forward. But in particular, what we're going to do, at least in these early years of this process, is look solely at the curriculum, at the program of legal education, about which we talked, and there's a whole segment in the declaration about curriculum and the program of legal education and what the basic elements should be for a well-grounded curriculum. And rather than doing a full institutional review of any particular school. And that evaluation is going to be conducted in terms of under the aegis of the guidelines that we adopted in the 2015 Madrid Protocol, which said how evaluators, the appropriate stance for evaluators to take when they do an assessment. And it's going to be informed by the judicial standards that we hope to adopt at the end of this meeting. So this certification program is unique. Barbara mentioned that this morning in her introduction, but it's unique in particular because it is based on global as opposed to local, governmental, or regional standards. And those standards were developed from the ground up rather than imposed from the top down. So in those two ways, this program and what we are looking at is quite unique in the world. It is also, I think, unique in terms of what people talk about when you have site visits and people come in and assess, in that it is totally voluntary. We're here, as Simon said, to help. For those schools that would like ideas, that would like to have a sense of where they are in terms of the conversation, who would like to see, it's open to any IALS school that would like to participate. But you can still be a very full-functioning member of the IALS and decide you don't want to participate in having a certification of any sort. So it's a voluntary program for those who think it would help them, and we're happy to provide that service. The program has three purposes, as we see it. The first, obviously, is, as I said, to evaluate the school's program of legal education, focusing on the current curriculum that is in a given school, including the pedagogies used, not just what courses are you offering and what is the substance in each of those courses, but what are you doing to engage student learning? So what kinds of pedagogies are you using? And to offer advice on possible improvements or possible new ideas to incorporate based on things we learn from the schools that are part of this association. The second purpose is to give the schools who participate information that will help them better explain their programs and some possible changes they might want to make to them to their universities or to their regulators. Because one of the things we heard from deans early on was that they were frustrated because they might want to make change, but everything was very rigid from on top, and they had no way of really kind of suggesting why, other than it's my idea, and I think it's a good one, why maybe some changes should come about. So we're hopeful that for those who participate, if they're in that situation, that, you know, one would be able to say, well, these are part of global standards. I mean, these are part of this international association, and that's why these would be good things for us to introduce to our curriculum, that it might give better explanations of why it's a good move that you want to make, and it has broader things than just the people within your institution who came up with it. And third, of course, upon achieving certification for those schools who go through it, to provide the added prestige affiliated with gaining recognition from a global learned society of institutions. So those are the purposes. More practically, how's it going to operate? And here's sort of the way we see it rolling out. First, a school will fill out a self-assessment report. You actually have a copy of what the final, we're sort of in a preliminary final draft of what that report might look like. And it provides information for the later site visit about you and your background and the like. I will remind those of you who've been with us all along this journey that we actually had a first cut at that self-assessment report in Singapore, and we talked about it in small groups. We got suggestions, got a lot of very good suggestions, went back, refined it. We've been refining it for 3 years now. And so this is where we're at now. Then once that is filled out, then that report, we now have a standing committee of the IALS called the Assessment and Evaluation Committee. And that committee will review the report to ensure that it's complete and ready for people to come for a visit, so that it's not a wasted visit because there's information that is lacking or just is not understood, etc. So to make sure everything's sort of in order for us to go forward. Then a site visit will take place. And the site visit will be probably 4 or so expert faculty from different regions of the world who are going to come for several days to the school. And what that team is, and it's very important to understand this, is the site team members will be volunteers. They're not going to be paid for their time or their expertise. They're people who are devoted to legal education and would like to be part of this process. So they are volunteers at helping to better legal education by being willing to dedicate their time and knowledge to being a member of a site team. And the good thing for those who want to participate, the schools, is that participating schools will be asked, at least during these early years when we're getting started, only to house and feed the team on site. The IALS will pay the airfares for the 14 members to visit the school. So the cost is basically taking care of them when they're with you to make sure that they don't faint from lack of food or the like. Further, the IALS will not charge any fees for conducting this process. There will not be a separate fee at this point because we understand this is new, people are trying to get used to it, and we want to make sure that everything comes off carefully, and it's meant to help you, not to charge you. Once the team comes back, they will write a report with recommendations to be submitted both to the school, the participating school, as well as to the Assessment and Evaluation Committee for purposes of considering certification. Very important, the report will be kept totally confidential by IALS, and the members of the site team will keep the report totally confidential. It's a report to help you. The school can release whatever they want to release about the report, but if the school doesn't want to release it, they don't have to release it. Again, it's for your benefit if you think that would help you to invite us to come in under these circumstances. And the Assessment and Evaluation Committee will look at it for purposes of whether or not the school is particularly ready at this moment for certification, or maybe give some suggestions. You could do these couple of things and then you look ready. It'll be a case-by-case basis. There's no cookie cutter in that sense to it. So to get us there, to this process, we have to do several steps to set up the program. We want it to be a high-quality opportunity. That's very important for our member schools. And thus, before we formally launch it in the sense of saying whoever wants to apply to have us come, will come, we're ready. We're going to roll this out, if you will, slowly to get us so that we make sure we do all the things necessary to prepare to do this in the best possible fashion. So this year, we're announcing the launch of it today at this meeting. And in addition, a written announcement is going to be sent to all our member schools, so not everybody could be here, outlining what I'm talking about today and distributing the self-assessment report so everybody will know, sort of what's on the horizon. Next year, we're going to be doing several things that are going to help us advance further in this. First, we're going to continue working with these study groups from the annual meeting with the goal of developing some model curricula incorporating not only substance but pedagogies or pedagogical approaches within particular areas, just as samples. Not that those are necessary, we can't do it for everything in the curriculum, but help our member schools get an idea of ways to think about developing course material. And the Assessment and Evaluation Committee is going to continue to develop a set of criteria based on our foundational documents and to be applied during the school evaluations so that the site team members will know what they're looking for and what we're trying to apply. We also, towards the end of the year, are going to solicit interest from schools who would like to participate and be visited in our first sort of pilot project of schools. We want to have 4 schools, 1 from each region, to try first, and so we intend to have this pilot project at the very end of 2019. So we'll solicit schools who are interested, maybe of being the school that would be visited. And then in early 2019, we're also going to ask you as deans and our other deans of member schools, we'd like some suggestions of faculty members, or maybe yourselves, if you'd be willing to be a site team member, if you're interested in participating in actually being a site team member in one of these visits that will take place later on. And that's very important because after we get suggestions, of those people, and I guess I'd give you this tip. In thinking about your faculty colleagues, if you think there might be some, think about the people who have been interested in your school in curriculum, in pedagogy, in those kinds of issues, because then they're going to be interested in seeing what's happening around the world on that and giving advice on that. Those people would be most helpful in this endeavor. What we're going to do after we get the suggestions is we're actually going to hold a workshop or workshops for those faculty who are selected as possible site team members. And it's very important for us at IALS expense to bring them together and to train them in this sense. That is about how to go about conducting a visit, to make sure we're all understanding what the criteria are in the same way so that it's even-handed, no matter, you're not going to have, you'll have 4 people and another school will have a different 4 people, to make sure we're all on the same page about what we're looking for and what it means, et cetera, and how to write a report that can be useful for the Evaluation and Assessment Committee. So we'll have this workshop to bring people together to start off our first launch of the program. And the idea is that the 4 schools that will be the first 4 that will be visited will probably be towards the end of the 2019 calendar year. And then that will have the reports to those schools in 2020, and we will formally launch in 2020 in the sense of opening it up once we go through this experience. So that's the framework. That's the work we have to do in the interim, which is a lot. And it's ambitious, but we have been working towards this since Singapore. And I'm very happy and pleased to say that obviously, as you can see, a lot of progress and concrete steps have been outlined and intend to be taken. So with that, I will now turn it over to Penny.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just have 4 slides, so it'll be quick. I wanted to show you the city of Cape Town. George Williams started this tradition. So this is the city of Cape Town, and we are hosting the conference in the African Law Deans Forum in March, and that is the University of Cape Town. Very, very beautiful setting. Of course, there's the other side of Cape Town that I can't show you now because it's not appropriate, but it has to do with real inequality and poverty in our beautiful city. Essentially today, what I'm going to be talking about is the reasons for the site visit, and particularly the perspective from the deans. So I was a law professor in the United States for 2 decades, and like Mary Kay and Joan, participated in several site accreditation visits at American law schools, and I chaired a few of them. So I have a deep knowledge, and I'm very involved in this process, which I think is an excellent process. I think that it really does contribute to enhancing and improving legal education, and it certainly serves as a great support for me when I was a dean in the United States. And this year, in fact, in South Africa, we've just completed, last year in fact, a Council of Higher Education accreditation process in South Africa. So this is a process that I've been familiar with, and I think is very good. Let me start first by just thanking the organizers. You have made an incredible, this is such a wonderful conference. Your hospitality, the organization, the food, the gifts, everything. And you've just made me incredibly envious about having to organize a conference in Cape Town next year. So thank you. And I also want to acknowledge Professor Wahida Amin, who is the other delegate from the University of Cape Town. She's the Deputy Dean for Internationalization and Outreach. And then, of course, Frank Wong and Bob, the team from IALS. Thank you so much. I thought that what I would talk about in my 10 minutes is really just 4 things about the site visit. It's about revisiting, reconsidering, resources, and renewal. So for those of you who are not familiar with the site visit process, I think the first thing that happens when it's announced that there will be an accreditation site visit, all law schools have to sort of revisit what it is that they do and that they've been doing for some time. So I was struck this morning with particularly George Williams, but other people as well. Letokwa Mpere from University of Johannesburg has sort of been involved in decolonization, and in South Africa and elsewhere there's been disruptions in the law. We all know that, and there's been a lot written about it. But if you think about law and what legal education is supposed to do, is sort of supposed to build on the stability, on the predictability, on the consistency of law. That's why we have the doctrine of precedent, stare decisis. And so it sort of it grounds us in a very, very conservative methodology. And there was a very famous New Zealand lawyer, I forget his name now, who really took an attack. He wrote an article in which he attacked this notion of precedent, and that he says it's a system, it's a fine system if it's run by sheep and not by human beings. So he really was calling for more disruption. So I think what we're talking about is disruption while we sort of revisit. So the first thing is we revisit what we do. The whole law school is involved in this process of prying into every corner of our program. Every class that we teach, our curriculum, the students, how we recruit students, and so on. And then we start the process of writing a self-assessment report, who we are. And it may seem very, very easy, but what is the first thing I think that many people, in particular lawyers, will do is do a bit of puffery. We actually have to say what it is that we do, and sometimes we mix up what we think we do or what we would like to do. So that self-assessment report is really a wonderful thing, because we have to tell